بسم الله الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما إلى علمنا. Inshallah, we'll continue with our mudarasa, our studying together of the book Muwatta Imam Malik rahimahullah ta'ala برواية أبي مصعب الزهري rahimahullah ta'ala. And this is inshallah going to be what we complete the first bab. The bab in the riwayah of Abi Mus'ab, he didn't give it any chapter title. But in the riwayat of others, the chapter title is Bab Mawaqit as-Salat, or Waqt as-Salat, or Wuqut as-Salat, or Awqat as-Salat. All of them different narrations mentioning it in different ways. That first section that deals with the general times of Salat. And obviously we know why Imam Malik, he started off his book with the times of Salat, we talked about before, because
he believes it's more important than wudu when it's
because the time in the view of Imam Malik is that it's more important, it's the most important shart from the shurut of Salat, more important than Tahara. And so you see that Imam Malik rahimahullah ta'ala in this chapter, he gathered up all of the times and all of the information of the times that you need. Right, in this one chapter, what is it, 13 narrations or 12? 12, right?
Mm-hmm.
He gathered up all of the information about the times that you need. We will test ourselves on this. But before testing ourselves on this, we want to do three things today. One, we want to cover the hadith of al-Qasim, or the athar of al-Qasim ibn Muhammad. We want to make sure we've memorized the entire chapter, and we want to make sure we've understood how to apply the entire chapter. And so we'll start off the hadith of al-Qasim ibn Muhammad. من حفظ؟ تفضل.
قال أبو مصعب حدثنا مالك عن ربيعة بن أبي عبد الرحمن عن القاسم بن محمد أنه قال ما أدركت الناس إلا وهم يصلون الظهر بعشي.
نعم. The hadith قال أبو مصعب حدثنا مالك أن ربيعة ابن أبي عبد الرحمن عن القاسم بن محمد أنه قال ما أدركت الناس إلا وهم يصلون الظهر بعشي. ربيعة ابن أبي عبد الرحمن، ربيعة ابن أبي عبد الرحمن al-Farrukh. Rabi'ah ibn Abi Abdul Rahman, who was known as al-Farrukh. And his father, Abi Abdul Rahman, was also known as al-Farrukh. Farrukh. And Rabi'ah ibn Abi Abdul Rahman, he was known as Rabi'at al-Ra'i. Rabi'ah al-Ra'i. When we talked about the different madaris, the different disciplines of the scholars of that time, and how there were two major disciplines. There was the madrasa ahlul hadith and madrasatul ra'i, the people of hadith and the people of ra'i. And when we say the people of hadith, we say that they were, generally speaking, the people of Medina. And when we talk about the people of ra'i, generally speaking, they were the people of Iraq, right, Kufa. From the things that can be misunderstood when we talk about the people in this connotation, and when we talk about the people in this classification, is that the people of Medina didn't have any ra'i, and the people of Iraq didn't have any hadith. And that's not the case. So Rabi'atul Ra'i, he was from the scholars of Medina, وَكَانَ يَتَّقُونَهُ لِمُعْضَلَاتِهِمْ, and they used to seek him out for those very difficult matters. And because of his leadership in fiqh, and his leadership in fatwa, and his position, he became known as Rabi'atul Ra'i. Rabi'ah with the opinion. He's the one that you go to ask the questions when the general hadith won't cut it. Right? When you need more than just the general hadith, and you need the insight into the hadith, who would they turn to? They would turn to Rabi'atul Ra'i. وهو Imam Malik. He is the teacher of Imam Malik. وَبِهِ تَفَقَّهَ. And Imam Malik, he learned from him. Rabi'a, they say about him that he used to be one who was dedicated specifically to the worship of salah. The worship of Allah. Salat, dhikr, psalm, he wouldn't go outside of that. And then that was taken from him and he was given to learning the religion. And so he went and he sat with al-Qasim ibn Muhammad, who we'll talk about shortly. He went and sat with al-Qasim ibn Muhammad. And because of the level of knowledge that he reached, al-Qasim, he used to say when people would ask him questions, and al-Qasim ibn Muhammad, as you all know, he's from the Fuqaha as-Sab'a, from those 7 major scholars of Medina during his time, from the Tabi'een. In spite of the status of al-Qasim, when the people would come and ask him questions, he would say, Salu hadha lil-Rabi'a. Go ask Rabi'a this question. And Rabi'a was his student. And they would ask him those difficult questions, things that not everybody could answer. And he would, if it was in the Kitab of Allah, he would answer them. And if it was in the Sunnah, he would answer them, yani al-Qasim. But if it was something outside of that, he would say, Salu hadha li-Rabi'a wa Salim. Go ask Rabi'a this question, or go ask Salim ibn Abdullah, who was from the seniors and the elders of Rabi'a. But this shows us the status of Rabi'a, that al-Qasim used to put him on the level of the Kibar al-Tabi'een, or the Awsat al-Tabi'een. Rabi'at al-Ra'i, what else is there generally to mention about him, about his quality? He was appointed the Imam, or he was commissioned by Abu al-Abbas as-Saffah. Abu al-Abbas as-Saffah, he is the one who established the Dawla al-Abbasiyya, right? Up until that time, up until 132 Hijrah, from 40 to 132, the Khilafah was in Bani Umayyah. The Khilafah was with a group known as Bani Umayyah. Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan, Yazid ibn Muawiyah, Muawiyah ibn Yazid ibn Muawiyah. A short break for Abdullah ibn Zubair, and then the second coming of Bani Umayyah, Marwan ibn al-Hakam, and Abdul Malik ibn Marwan, and al-Walid ibn Abdul Malik, and Sulaiman ibn Abdul Malik, and then a break with Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, and then Yazid ibn Abdul Malik, and then Hashim or Hisham ibn Abdul Malik. Like this until as-Saffah, Abu al-Abbas, from the descendants of Abdullah ibn Abbas, took over the Khilafah in the year 132. And when he set up his base in Al-Anbar, which is in Iraq, he requested that Rabi'a come and be the judge of the people, Qadi al-Muslimin. And Rabi'a, he refused. He went to Iraq, he met the Khalifa. The Khalifa ordered that he be given gifts and prizes and things of this nature, but he refused. And that's because they used to have a disdain for the people of Iraq during that time. The people of Medina, they used to have something against the people of Iraq during that time, right? We talked about it, these competing schools. And so from the things that Rabi'a, he said to Malik, when I go to Iraq, right, I have to meet the Khalifa, I have to go into this area. If you hear that I have told them any hadith or given them any fatwa, فَلَا تُعُدْنِي شَيْئًا, then don't consider me to be anything, right? Consider me to be nothing after that, right? And they say that he did that. When he went there, he didn't give them any hadith, nor did he give them any fatwa. And this is generally speaking, in spite of the desire of the people of Iraq to learn from him. And they asked some of the individuals about Rabi'at al-Ra'i, and they said about him, tell us about Rabi'at al-Ra'i. And he said, you all call him the Rabi'a of opinion, i.e. as if he's with you all. But I didn't meet anybody who preserved hadith more than him, right? So even though he was known as Rabi'at al-Ra'i, we shouldn't think that he was one who was void and incompetent or incapable in hadith. They say that he died on that trip to al-Anbar or Anbar. And some of them say that he made it back to Medina alive in his passing. The majority of them say that the strongest view was that it was in the year 136 after the Hijrah. 136 after the Hijrah. And that is Rabi'a ibn Abi Abdul Rahman Farrukh, who was known as Rabi'atul Ra'i. From the things that, like Ash-Shay B'Shay Yudhkar, is that he was a close friend of Yahya ibn Sa'id that we mentioned earlier. Yahya ibn Sa'id al-Ansari. And they were similar in age, but they used to have great respect for each other. So Yahya ibn Sa'id al-Ansari, if you remember, we say that he was on the level of Imam az-Zuhri in hadith. He was on the level of Imam az-Zuhri in hadith. And so he would narrate hadith to the people, Yahya ibn Sa'id al-Ansari. But when Rabi'a would come in, Yahya would stop talking out of respect for Rabi'a, even though they were similar in age. And even though we're saying that Yahya ibn Sa'id was at the status of az-Zuhri, this is how he valued Rabi'a. And he had a close friendship with Rabi'a. When we talked about the biography of Rabi'a, the biography of Yahya ibn Sa'id, that once Yahya ibn Sa'id had to travel to Africa to collect an inheritance of his. And so the person who paid for him to go, who bought the riding equipment for him to leave, was Rabi'a al-Ra'i. And so when he got back and the people came to welcome Yahya ibn Sa'id back to Medina, and Rabi'a came and to welcome him back and to greet him, when Rabi'a got ready to leave, Yahya stopped him from leaving. And then when all the people left, he closed the door and commanded that it be locked. And Yahya's inheritance was 500 dinar, 500 gold coins, which is a lot of money at that time. It's a lot of money at this time. And he poured it all out, and he told to Rabi'a that there is nothing missing here except a coin or two that I might have spent on the path, right, to get back home. And then he divided it with him 50-50. He gave Rabi'a 250 dinar, and he kept 250 for himself. This shows you that close relationship that they had, that he treated him as his equal and his brother. After as-Saffah died, Abu al-Abbas as-Saffah, his son Abu Ja'far Mansur took over. Abu Ja'far al-Mansur, the Khalifa, he took over in the year 136. And he requested that Yahya ibn Sa'id come to Anbar to be the judge, to be the Qadi. And at that point in time, as we mentioned in the biography of Yahya, he had fell on hard times. He had become poor. And so he went to Iraq to become the judge, where he found affluency again. And he told one of his companions before leaving Medina, I am going there, i.e. to Iraq, and I don't not know anything. Yani, I know everything I need to know. I know everything I need to know. And when he got to Iraq, he wrote to his companion that he had talked to before he left. He said, I had said that statement to you before I left, that there's nothing that I don't need to know except I know it. And I get here, and the first dispute that I am responsible for is a situation that I've never heard of before, right? So go ask Rabi'a about it, and don't tell him it's from me, right? And so this shows you the status of Rabi'a amongst the people during that time. From the statements that are commonly mentioned about Rabi'a, the stories that are commonly spread about Rabi'a, but they are most likely untrue, but we'll mention it so that you can know it, and to know that it's most likely untrue, is that Abi Abdul Rahman Farrukh, they say that he went out to do battle during, I'm trying to remember whose life it would have been, during one of the battles in Iraq, right? So this would have been during the time of either Umar or Uthman, if I'm not mistaken, but most likely Umar, during the time of Umar. And his mother, Rabi'a, was pregnant with him. And Farrukh, they say he left her 40,000 dinar. And he left and he was gone for 27 years. And when he came back, he went to his home, فَإِذَا بِهِ رَبِيعَةٌ. And there he found Rabi'ah in his home. And so he said, Ya adu Allah, O enemy of Allah, what are you doing in my home? Right? And Rabi'ah, he said, Ya, bal anta ya adu Allah. No, you're the enemy of Allah. What are you doing trying to come in on my womenfolk? And so one of them said, Wallahi la ufariquka illa inda sultan. I'm not going to leave you except in front of the sultan. Right? We're about to fight and I'm not letting you go until we take this to the judge. And the voices became raised and they began to fight until the people of Medina came out to help Rabi'ah, because they knew who Rabi'ah was. And they say, and this is one of the ways you know the story is false, they say that Imam Malik was there, right? But Rabi'ah would have been how old? 27, right? Imam Malik, it's possible, but Imam Malik would have still been a child, right? They say Imam Malik was there, so he asked the individual, the elder, you know, don't you have other places you can go instead of these people's house? And he said, this is my house. I'm Farouk. And when Rabi'ah's mother heard this, she came out and she said, this is your father and this is your son. And they hugged and they embraced each other and everything was enjoyable. And he went to his wife and he asked her, where is the 40,000 I gave you? And she said, I buried it. He said, because I have another 400 or some number to add to it. She said, I buried it. I'll bring it out for you tomorrow. Or she said, I buried it. And Rabi'ah went to the masjid to conduct his classes. And his wife, i.e. the wife of Farouk, told him to go to the masjid to pray salat in the Prophet's masjid. And when he went to the masjid, he saw Rabi'ah and those individuals who were around him learning, like Malik and like others than them. And Rabi'ah acted like he didn't see him. And he said, Wallahi, my son has reached a level of nobility that I haven't seen in anybody before. And so he went back to his wife and he said, look at what your son has become. Right? He has a level of nobility that I haven't seen anywhere before. And so she said to him, which one do you love more? The 40,000 or that your son be in such a noble state? He said, La wallah, that my son be in such a noble state. She says, good, because I spent the 40,000 on him. That's the story that is commonly mentioned about Rabi'ah. You'll hear it often, but the story, most of them say it has no authenticity to it. It's a fabricated story. And so this is some of the information about Rabi'ah al-Ra'i. And al-Qasim ibn Muhammad. Al-Qasim ibn Muhammad ibn Abi Bakr as-Siddiq radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. Al-Qasim ibn Muhammad ibn Abi Bakr as-Siddiq Khalifatu Rasulillahi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. His father, Muhammad ibn Abi Bakr. Muhammad ibn Abi Bakr was born during Hajjatul Wada'. He was born during Hajjatul Wada'. Muhammad's mother was Asma bint Umays. Asma bint Umays. Asma bint Umays, she is a Sahabiya who made the 2 hijras. She moved to Habasha with her husband at the time, Ja'far ibn Abi Talib. Her husband at the time was Ja'far ibn Abi Talib. And then when Ja'far ibn Abi Talib returned from Habasha with the rest of those who were still in Habasha, year 7 after the Hijrah, right? When the Prophet ﷺ was returning from Khaybar, he returned with his wife Asma bint Umays. Ja'far radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he died year 8 in the Battle of Mu'ta, right? That famous Battle of Mu'ta. Mu'ta is when Ja'far died, when they cut both of his arms off, when he was holding the flag, and the Prophet ﷺ mentioned about him, you see Ja'far yatiru, right? He's flying, being replaced his arms with wings. Ja'far, he died in the Battle of Mu'ta. After Ja'far died, Asma, she married Abu Bakr. So she would have married Abu Bakr year 8, the beginning of year 9. She conceived for Ja'far, some of his sons like Abdullah ibn Ja'far and Aun ibn Ja'far, but she also conceived for Abu Bakr, Muhammad ibn Abi Bakr. and she was pregnant with Muhammad ibn Abi Bakr during the farewell pilgrimage. And so Muhammad ibn Abi Bakr, he saw the Prophet ﷺ, which leads us to the question, is he a Sahabi? They say no. And this is from the things that are like the elghaz, like the tricks, the difficult questions that you can pose to a person. A tabi'i who his hadith is connected to the Prophet ﷺ, and a person who saw the Prophet who his hadith is disconnected. Explain. A tabi'i who his hadith to the Prophet ﷺ is connected, and a person who saw the Prophet ﷺ who his hadith to the Prophet ﷺ is disconnected.
Was he a child?
So a child, yeah, well, which one? Who's a tabi'i who his hadith to the Prophet are connected? Meaning, we said a tabi'i saying the Prophet said something, we call that what? Mursal. Marfu'u tabi'in ala al-mashhuri mursalun aw qayyidhu bil kabiri. If a tabi'i says the Prophet said something, we say that is mursal. But there's an example of a tabi'i saying the Prophet said something that is connected. The example of that is the person was a kafir when he met the Prophet ﷺ, and then he accepted Islam later. Is he a Sahabi? No. He was a kafir when he met the Prophet ﷺ, and then he accepted Islam later, after the Prophet ﷺ died. Was he a Sahabi? Well, because you had to meet the Prophet, believe in him, and die with Iman. He met the Prophet, he died with Iman, but he didn't believe in him while the Prophet was alive. So this individual, if he heard something from the Prophet ﷺ while he was a kafir and then accepted Islam, even though he's not a Sahabi, what he tells us that the Prophet ﷺ said is considered to be connected. Because this individual met the Prophet ﷺ and he's honest and reliable. So we say this is an example of a tabi'i saying something about the Prophet that is connected. Like, what about a Sahabi whose hadith is disconnected? His hadith, we don't count it. We say, no, this hadith is disconnected. It's weak. There's a missing link.
Heard it from another Sahabi.
No, marasil al-sahaba, fiqh. If a Sahabi says something from a Sahabi, it doesn't matter anymore. They say it's those individuals who they say about them, lahum ru'ya. They saw the Prophet ﷺ, but they weren't of the age to actually comprehend from the Prophet ﷺ. Like the babies that the Prophet ﷺ might have named, or the people that were born during the Prophet's life ﷺ, but didn't get to actually learn something from him. And so this adds another level to the conversation about what is a Sahabi. We said a Sahabi had to meet the Prophet. Did Muhammad ibn Abi Bakr meet the Prophet? Did he meet the Prophet? Yeah, he was a baby. The Prophet, right? He was the son of Abu Bakr. You think the Prophet ﷺ never saw him? Right? So he met the Prophet. Did Muhammad ibn Abi Bakr die with Iman? Inshallah, he died with Iman. Like, did he believe in the Prophet? When he was a baby, does a baby have actions? And so they say because of that, his companionship is not established. And there are a lot of individuals like this who were too young when they met the Prophet ﷺ. They say that the person had to be at least to the age of discernment, right? Somebody old enough to comprehend from the Prophet ﷺ. For example, al-Hasan wal-Hussein. How old were they when the Prophet ﷺ died? Think about it. Anybody know when Hassan and Hussein were born?
Less than 8.
Less than 8 for sure. Hassan was born in year Mawlidu Sibt al-Hasan. I want to say in year 4. And Hussein was born in year 5. So that means Hassan would have been 6. No, Hussein would have been 6 when the Prophet died, and Hassan would have been 7. They say that Hassan only heard 4 hadith from the Prophet ﷺ. Everything else that Hassan narrates is with an intermediary. But they consider Hassan from the Sahaba, even though he was so young, because he was old enough to comprehend. Same thing like Ibn Abbas, right? He made hijrah when he was 10, according to some of them. And when the Prophet ﷺ died, he would have been 11 or 12. And so they still count the hadith that he learned, and they still consider him a sahabi. But somebody like Muhammad ibn al-Qasim, they don't consider him a sahabi. And that's because he wasn't old enough to comprehend from the Prophet ﷺ when the Prophet died. He was born year 9, or year 10, I'm sorry, and he barely spent 6 months around the Prophet ﷺ. The Prophet made Hajj in Dhul Hijjah, and he died in Rabi al-Awwal, so that's what, 3 months. And Muhammad was born in that Hajj time, so he was only 3 months old when the Prophet ﷺ died. Muhammad's mother, Asma bint Umays, after Abu Bakr died in the year 13. After Abu Bakr died, his mother married, who do you think his mother married? Ali, radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. So she was married to Ja'far ibn Abi Talib, Ali's brother. And she was married to Abu Bakr, radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. And she was married to Ali, radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. Ajma'in, radiyallahu ta'ala anhum ajma'in. So her lot in the hereafter is going to be one, right? Who she decides to be with, who she decides to have as her spouse in Jannah is going to be, a lot of options for her, radiyallahu ta'ala anha.
It's not the last person she was married to.
Scholars disagree, but I lean to, for no apparent reason, that she chooses, right? The point of it is that so she married Ali. So Muhammad was raised in whose house? Who raised Muhammad? Abu Bakr. He died 2 years after Muhammad was born, 3 years after Muhammad was born. Ali raised Muhammad. And so Muhammad ibn Abi Bakr is considered like from the children of Ali, right? He's considered like from the children of Ali. And he was given the authority of Egypt by Uthman. He was given the authority of Egypt by Uthman. This is Muhammad ibn Abi Bakr, the father of al-Qasim. Unfortunately, Muhammad was from the people who instigated against Uthman. Right, we know the rabble rousers who came and those who eventually ended up killing Uthman, radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, they came out of Egypt. And from those who were amongst the rabble rousers, those who riled the people up, from them was Muhammad. And they mentioned that Muhammad is even one of the people who jumped the gate against Uthman and was prepared to kill him, radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. They mentioned though that he, when Uthman, reprimanded him with his father, or how would your father react to you doing such a thing? Khafa wattaqallah, and he left. But then the other individuals hopped the gate and killed Uthman. The point is that Muhammad, rahimahullah, he had a role to play in that. And he was close to Ali. And so when the fitna broke out after the death of Uthman, Ali put him in charge of Egypt. This would have been in year 36 or 37. And this is around the time when al-Qasim is born. But al-Qasim and his mother, Sauda, they were left in Medina. He didn't bring them with them to Egypt. So al-Qasim never met his father. He never met his father, Muhammad, because Muhammad was killed shortly thereafter by Amr ibn al-As on a day of battle known as Yawm al-Musanna. When Amr ibn al-As, under the leadership of Muawiyah and those factions that were at conflict at that time, Amr ibn al-As was successful in taking Egypt away from Muhammad, and Muhammad was slain during that time. And so al-Qasim ibn Muhammad, he never met his father. Just like Muhammad ibn Abi Bakr never met his father, right? He never narrated. There's a disconnect in the narration. So if you ever see a hadith that says, and al-Qasim and Muhammad and Abi Bakr, know that that hadith is weak. It's a disconnected hadith. But al-Qasim, rahimahullah, he was raised as an orphan. But from the good decree of Allah for him is that he was raised in the house of Aisha, right? Even though he had uncles and others, Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha, she was one known for taking care of orphans, and she raised Muhammad in her house. And like this, Muhammad tafaqaha anha. He learned from Aisha. Aisha, during the time of Abu Bakr and Umar and Uthman, was the reference point for fatwas in Medina. Meaning, if you needed an answer in Medina, who would you ask? You would ask Aisha. And this is the house that al-Qasim was raised in. He also studied under the likes of Abdullah ibn Umar and other than them from the Sahaba. وَبِهِمْ تَفَقَّهْ, until he reached the level of seniority in Medina to where he was included from amongst the fuqaha as-sab'a. Right? إِذَا قِيلَ مَنْ فِي الْفِقْهِ سَبْعَةُ أَبْحُرٍ رِوَايَتُهُمْ عَنْ عِلْمِ لَيْسَ بِخَارِجَةٍ فَهُمْ عُبَيْدَ اللَّهِ عُرْوَةُ قَاسِمٌ سَعِيدٌ سُلَيْمَانٌ أَبُو بَكْرٍ خَارِجَةٌ. Right? The 7 scholars of Medina, if it's asked to you, who are the people that are like oceans in knowledge, their statements are never outside of true knowledge, then they are Ubaydullah, and Ubaydullah ibn Abdullah ibn Utbah ibn Mas'ud, Urwa ibn Zubair, al-Qasim, Qasim ibn Muhammad, Sa'id, yani Sa'id ibn Musayyib, Abu Bakr ibn Abdul Rahman ibn al-Harith ibn Hisham, or ibn Hashim, ibn Hisham, Sulaiman ibn Yasar, and Kharija ibn Zayd ibn Thabit. Right? These are known as the Fuqaha as-Sab'a. And so al-Qasim became one of them. And he became from the leaders of them. Right? Al-Qasim was from the most prominent scholars of Medina and from the most righteous of the scholars of Medina. They say that his hadith were about 200 in number. Right? And a person might ask, well, it seems so small comparatively. But the older and the further back you go in narration, the more cautious they were in how they would narrate. And so he wouldn't narrate in abundance. So to narrate 200 hadith in such a time period is a lot, right? To narrate 200 hadith in such a time period is a lot. He was so noble and so prestigious that Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, when he became the Khalifa, he said, and the story behind Umar ibn Abdul Aziz becoming the Khalifa is one you should know. When Abdul Malik ibn Marwan died, he took the pledge that the Khilafah not be taken out of his children, right? So he took the pledge that the Khulafa will be from my children after me. So Al-Walid, Sulaiman, Yazid, and Hisham. These were the children of Abdul Malik. And so when Walid took over after Abdul Malik, when he got ready to die, he made the crown prince, or Wali al-Ahd, Sulaiman. And there was a lot of fitna that had happened during the rulership of Bani Umayyah. A lot of oppression, a lot of zulm happened during that time. And so Sulaiman, who was a righteous individual, he wanted to get the people back on track. And so he took advice of, who should I put in charge? And even though his father had took the pledge that the Khilafah not come out of his children, everybody suggested that he put Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, his cousin, in charge. And he accepted their suggestion. And so Umar ibn Abdul Aziz was the Khalifa for 2 years and some change. And during his time, he got the Muslims back on track and repaid all of the oppression that was committed and returned the money to its people. From the things that Umar ibn Abdul Aziz said when he was the Khalifa, he said, if I had the option to make the decision, I would have appointed al-Qasim the next Khalifa. I would have appointed al-Qasim the next Khalifa. Imam Malik, he says, but Yazid had already been given the pledge of obedience after the death of Umar ibn Abdul Aziz. So this just shows you the status of al-Qasim ibn Muhammad. Al-Qasim ibn Muhammad ibn Abi Bakr. He died in the year 106 after the Hijrah. So he died shortly after Umar ibn Abdul Aziz. That is Al-Qasim ibn Abi Bakr ibn Al-Qasim ibn Muhammad ibn Abi Bakr. And his kunya was Abu Muhammad. And the kunya of Rabi'a was Abu Uthman. We forgot to mention that. Right, so this is the isnad. Malik and Rabi'a ibn Abi Abdul Rahman and Al-Qasim ibn Muhammad qala ma adraktu nas. I didn't catch the people. If Al-Qasim is from the Tabi'een, who is he referring to? The Sahaba. And so he's telling us a statement of the action of the Sahaba. And the Sahaba's actions, are they a proof or not? We talked about before that sometimes yes and sometimes no. But his statement, ma adraktu nas, it is giving the sense that this is what the body of the Sahaba and the people of Medina were doing. And from the usul of Imam Malik is that the actions of the people of Medina is a proof. The action of the people of Medina is a proof. And so that's why it's suitable for Imam Malik to bring that narration here in this book. A person might ask, what good is Al-Qasim ibn Muhammad telling us about something? That's not an evidence. You see what I'm saying? It's not the Prophet said. It's not even the Sahaba said. It's Al-Qasim ibn Muhammad saying. But Imam Malik, it's suitable for him to bring this as a proof in his book because he believes that the action of the people of Medina is an evidence. And this opinion is one that is strong, right? It's one that is strong. And although it's not absolute, Ibn Taymiyyah, rahimahullah, he supports it. He supports that when you see that the people of Medina as a whole were doing something, then where did they get that information from? Right? They would have gotten it from their grandparents, their parents, who would have been Sahaba. And if they were Sahaba doing this action, and this is what the people of Medina were doing, where did they get that information from? They would have gotten it from the Prophet ﷺ. So the action of the people of Medina is a strong argument for it to be considered an evidence. And Ibn Taymiyyah, he used to support the Maliki madhab a lot. Like the usul and the fundamentals that Imam Malik based his madhab on. Even though Ibn Taymiyyah was Hanbali, in his origin, you see him giving great support and saying that like the best fundamentals and the best arguments are with the Maliki madhab, right? Because of its close proximity to the time of the Prophet ﷺ. And we talked about this book, the Muwatta, how the Khalifa Abu Ja'far al-Mansur wanted to make this book Islam. But so this hadith is not strange from Imam Malik to present it because to him it is a proof. And we're going to see a lot of examples in this book of how Imam Malik will bring something that others don't consider a proof, but he does. Like we saw the hadith of Ata ibn Yasar, who was a tabi'i, who said that a man came to the Prophet. That hadith is mursal, but we said Imam Malik considers a mursal hadith as a proof. So here, Al-Qasim ibn Muhammad, he says, Ma adraktu nas. I didn't reach the people being the Sahaba, illa wahum yusalluna dhuhr bi'ashi, except that they used to pray dhuhr during ashi. Like, what is ashi? You hear this word in the Quran, bukratan wa ashiya, right? What is ashi? Huh? Midday?
After midday.
Okay. Why do you say that? Just because it was praying Dhuhr?
Bukra is morning, right?
Bukra is morning. Okay, good. Okay, I like that. You got any guesses? You got any ideas? You don't know any words like ashi?
Isha.
Isha?
That's what's confusing me.
And that's the reason I bring it up, because the language can be confusing. And these names in these times can be confusing. because different people use different words to refer to different, or use similar words to refer to different times of the day. And so it's necessary for the student, when he sees these times being mentioned, bukratan wa ashiya wa ghuduwan wal bil ghuduwi wal asal, right? All of these different times that al masa, asr, right? All of these times, don't just take what you know about them now to be, well, this is what time it is. You have to go back and look at classically, how did they define this time?
Vernacular.
Huh?
Is it vernacular?
Yeah, so like, for example, when we say masa, if I tell you the dhikr of the morning and the evening, right? The adhkar al-sabah wal masa. When is the masa? Ba'd al-asr? You sure?
I'm not sure, but
Right.
that's what I'm thinking.
How many people used to make, I used to make those adhkar ba'd al-maghrib. Because in English, the morning adhkar and the evening adhkar, when is the evening in English? Huh? We would usually look at evening time as maghrib. But evening time is not maghrib. Evening time is before maghrib. Maghrib is nighttime. Right? And we have words like this even in English that we see today. What's the difference between supper and dinner? I'm looking at American because I know they might know the difference between these words. What's the difference between supper and dinner? Somebody says,
I thought they were the same.
supper is what you have before maghrib. That's why, you know, like African-American culture, we would always say supper is for white people. Because white people usually eat dinner 5, 6 o'clock. While African-Americans, we used to always eat after nighttime. We would eat late, 7, 8 o'clock at night at times, right?
That's it.
Huh? So, like, these terms, even in English, we see the differences of them. So when we look at this hadith, or this athar, it says that ma adraktu nas illa wa hum yusalluna dhuhra bi'ashi, that I didn't reach the people except that they were praying dhuhr bi'ashi. We need to know what ashi is, because the first thing I'm looking at when I look at the Quran, right? If I open the Quran, bukratin wa ashiya, it might be translated in the morning and in the evening, right? Bil ghuduwi wal asal, in the morning and in the evening, right? So would they pray dhuhr in the evening?
So you could pray dhuhr in the evening. You could
The
pray
narration says, "Ma adraktu nas illa wa hum yusalluna dhuhr bi'ashi." So the first thing we have to ask ourselves is, what is ashi? And without getting into the origins of the meanings and things like that, it comes from not being able to see. That's why you call a person who is somewhat blind a'sha. Hada rajulun a'sha, right? But al-ashi, they say it is from dhuhr min al-zawal ila al-maghrib. That whole time is called ashi. Just like
Comparable to Asr.
min dhuhr ila maghrib. All of that time is called ashi, right? And isha is after maghrib, right? Maghrib and isha is in the isha. It's in the night. And that's why some of them, the Arab, they used to call maghrib salatul isha. And the Prophet used to say to the Sahaba, don't let the Arabs, the desert Arabs, beat you in the name. Don't let their name be the name that you call it. It's Salatul Maghrib, not Isha. And he used to say the same thing about their Isha. The Arabs, they used to call Salatul Isha al-Atama, right? And he used to say, don't let the Arabs beat you in the name of your Salat. It's Salatul Isha, not Atama, right? Because they would use words that would be confused, because these words are at particular actions and times of the day. But you'll find them having statements like this. There are 2 Salat al-Ashi. What is the Salat al-Ashi? Dhuhr and Asr. And then you have Salat al-Isha, the 2 Salats of Isha, Maghrib and Isha. So an individual has to understand that when they say Ashi here, they're talking about from Zawal until Maghrib. Right. So now that we understand what is Ashi, we still have a problem. He said, Ma adraktu nas, I didn't catch the people except that they were praying dhuhr at Ashi time. When would they pray dhuhr?
For Asr, like a little.
It didn't say before Asr.
In that time frame.
In that time frame. What is that time frame?
Just, use the hadith.
From Zawal
Just
to Maghrib. You can't add your own information to it up front. You see what I'm saying? When you're reading a narration, you have to do what the narration what? The narration said. The narration of Muhammad ibn al-Qasim, he says, I didn't catch the people except that they were praying dhuhr bi-ashi. And so now we have a problem because ashi is when? Zawal, dhuhr until Maghrib. Can you pray dhuhr at Maghrib time? Can you pray dhuhr at Asr time? So, so you could say that this hadith is applicable to the traveler, but he said, Ma adraktu nas. I didn't catch the people. And that gives the opinion, that gives the apparentness that where would he catch the people at? In the city. You know what I mean? Like, ma adraktu. Like, I didn't see the people. I didn't find the people. You don't find the people traveling. You find the people when you open your door. Oh, there go all the people. What are they doing? They're praying dhuhr bi-ashi. So saying that this hadith is applicable to traveling, no, we have a problem. It's not the best. So what else? What do we do? Because we all agree, well, not all of us, because some of us say you can pray dhuhr at Asr time. Right? There are some people that say that. But the majority of us agree that you can't pray dhuhr at Asr time. So how do we answer this question?
Use the other hadith.
Use the other hadith? Well, that's the reason why we say you can't do it. But what about this one? Because he's telling us that he saw the Sahaba praying at Ashi.
He probably means at the time of the sunset.
He just means the early time?
Yeah, that's what he meant.
Okay. So he just means the early time. You're with me, right? This is what you have to do with hadith. You can't bring your own baggage with you. You got to look at it and then try to figure it out. But this is why knowing what the Salaf said becomes so important, because the Salaf are the one who explained these things to remove the confusion. Fadl, barakallahu fihi, he added, maybe it's the early time. But did you know that Salat al-Dhuhr, they used to say that the early time had the Salat al-Khawarij. Praying Dhuhr at the early time was the Salat of the Khawarij. Because the Khawarij, during that time, they would pray Dhuhr once it comes in. And so the Salaf of that time, they didn't like to pray Dhuhr immediately. They would say, Tilka Salat al-Khawarij. This is the Salat of the Khawarij. So, is al-Qasim saying that it's the early time? No. So what's left?
Delayed a little bit.
Delayed a little bit. Because you can't do it. It's all before Asr. But they wouldn't pray Dhuhr when it came in. They would wait until Dhuhr came in and was there for a little bit. And that's why it was appropriate to call it Ashi. You see what I'm saying? Because when I say Ashi, the first thing you think about isn't Dhuhr. The first thing you think about is Asr. You see what I'm saying? Just like if I said al-Masa. When is the Masa?
After.
Min Dhuhr ila Maghrib. Al-Masa is from Dhuhr ila Maghrib also. But when I say Masa, what's the first thing you think about? Asr. You see what I'm saying? Ba'd al-Asr. And so, why would he say bi-ashi? He's saying that to let you know that they would wait. They wouldn't pray right away after Dhuhr, because still Salat al-Khawarij. They would pray bi-ashi, ya akhi. But what does he mean by ashi? I.e., after Dhuhr had came in and stayed for a while. Then they would pray. And this is especially the case in the summer. Because in the summertime, exactly at high noon, what is it? It's Dhuhr time, but what is it? How does it feel?
Hot.
Hot. And they used to delay the salat when it was hot. The Prophet would delay the salat, and Umar would delay the salat. He would tell the people, wait. And then they'd come to pray, he'd say, wait. And then they would come to pray, and he'd say, wait. Right? And so when it was hot, they would delay the salat. And this goes back to another hadith that we already talked about. Salat dhuhr إذا كان الفي
ذراع.
ذراعا. And so these hadith, when you understand them together, we see why Imam Malik is bringing them. What does this athar of Al-Qasim ibn Muhammad mean? It means the same thing as Umar said, صَلِّ الظُّهُرُ وَالْفَيْءُ ذِرَاعًا, i.e. delay dhuhr. Don't pray it in the early time. Delay it until it's as if you were in the evening, right? And so this is what this narration means. It shouldn't be made to make you think that it's Isha or in the evening, because some people say Al-Ashi is from Dhuhr until Fajr, right? And so don't let this word Ashi confuse you. It's from Dhuhr until Maghrib, but the reason why Al-Qasim ibn Muhammad used it was to show that they wouldn't pray Dhuhr right away. They would delay Dhuhr until it cooled down, and to not match the Khawarij who would pray in the earliest of the time. And all of these things show you something, right? The Khawarij, why would they pray in the earliest of the time?
Trying to get that ibadah maybe.
Try to get that ibadah in, right? The Khawarij, they were known for what? Trying to get that ibadah in. But praying at the earliest part of the time would be what?
Imitating.
Difficult.
Or
Because it's hot. But they don't care about the difficulty. They want to worship Allah, right? So they would worship Allah in that difficult time. That's not the way of the Salaf. The way of the Salaf is to do what? Make things easy on the people. So when you come across the people with these concepts, we see that the Salaf from the past would be different than the Khawarij. No, we're not going to pray Dhuhr in the early time. And then when we find out that they're praying in the early time, no, we're definitely not praying now. That's what the Khawarij do. Tilka salat al-Khawarij. You pray, what time you pray Dhuhr? I prayed it once he came in, akhi. Khariji. Right? Even though our general principle is what? As-salatu fi awwal al-waqt. Praying at the earliest time, praying in the beginning of the time. But the Salaf would leave off something general like that for something more specific, which is making things easier on the people, not imitating the kuffar and the people of bid'ah. And so these are all subtle things that have nothing to do with salat, but fall under those general principles that we learn about. And so this is that chapter Wuqut as-Salat. That was the first thing we wanted to do. The second thing we wanted to do is make sure we all memorize this chapter. So everybody has to say all 12 narrations. Go ahead, close your books.
Who started?
I'm gonna go 10, 12. You gonna go 12? You gonna go 12? You gonna go 12?
Inshallah.
You leave your book open for me because I can't see that far. If I make a mistake, sahihni. This is how we judge a person in hadith. Are you thiqatun thabt? Are you thiqah? Are you saduq? Are you layyin? Are you da'if? Are you da'if jiddin? Are you mawdu'? We're going to find out right now. Anybody need a second to review? It's being recorded. Everybody going to know what you are. Everybody going to know if you da'if now.
It is what it is, I guess. Everybody going to know.
طيب بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قال أبو مصعب أحمد ابن أبي بكر الزهري حدثنا مالك بن أنس عن ابن شهاب عن عروة أن عمر بن عبد العزيز أخر صلاة يوما فدخل عليه عروة بن الزبير فأخبره أن المغيرة بن شعبة أخر الصلاة يوما وهو بالكوفة فدخل عليه أبو مسعود الأنصاري فقال ما هذا يا مغيرة أليس قد علمت أن جبريل نزل فصلى رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم ثم صلى 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 رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم ثم قال بهذا أمرت فقال عمر لعروة اعلم ما تحدث يا عروة إن جبريل هو الذي أقام لرسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم وقت الصلاة فقال عروة كذلك كان بشير بن أبي مسعود يحدث عن أبي قال عروة ولقد حدثتني عائشة زوج النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم كان يصلي العصر والشمس في حجرتها قبل أن تظهر قال أبو مصعب حدثنا مالك عن زيد بن أسلم عن عطاء بن يسار أنه قال جاء رجل إلى رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم فسأله عن وقت صلاة الصبح فسكت عنه رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال أحسن الله عليك قال فسكت عنه رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. And if somebody makes a mistake, don't wait for them, yell it out, be loud about it, right? قال فسكت عنه رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم حتى إذا كان من الغد صلى الصبح حين طلع الفجر ثم صلى الصبح من الغد بعد أن أسفر ثم قال أين السائل عن وقت الصلاة فقال ها أنا ذا يا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم فقال ما بين هذين وقت. قال أبو مصعب حدثنا مالك عن يحيى بن سعيد الأنصاري يحيى بن سعيد عن عمرة بنت عبد الرحمن عن عائشة رضي الله تعالى عنها زوج النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم. أحب أن أقول رضي الله عنها. عن عائشة رضي الله تعالى عنها زوج النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أنها قالت كان رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم ليصلي إن كان رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم ليصلي الفجر فينصرف النساء أحسن الله إليك إن كان رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم ليصلي الصبح فينصرف النساء متلفعات بمروطهن ما يعرفن من الغلس. قال أبو مصعب حدثنا مالك عن زيد بن أسلم عن عطاء بن يسار وعن بسر بن سعيد وعن الأعرج يحدثون عن أبي هريرة رضي الله تعالى عنه أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال من أدرك ركعة من الصبح قبل أن تطلع الشمس فقد أدرك الصبح ومن أدرك ركعة من العصر قبل أن تغرب الشمس فقد أدرك العصر. قال أبو مصعب حدثنا مالك النافع مولى عبد الله بن عمر رضي الله تعالى عنهما أن عمر بن الخطاب رضي الله تعالى عنه كتب إلى عماله أن أهم أمركم عندي الصلاة من حفظها أو حافظ عليها فقد حفظ دينه ومن ضيعها فهو لما سواها أضيع. ثم كتب أن صلي الظهر ثم كتب صلي أحسن الله عليك أن صلوا أحسن الله عليك ثم كتب أن صلوا الظهر والفيء ذراع إلى أن يكون ظل أحدكم مثله والعصر والشمس بيضاء نقية قدر ما يسير الراكب فرسخين أو ثلاثة والمغرب إذا غربت الشمس والعشاء إذا غاب الشفق والعشاء إذا غاب الشفق إلى ثلث الليل فمن نامت فلا نامت عينه فمن نامت فلا نامت عينه فمن نامت فلا نامت عينه والصبح والصبح والنجوم بادية مشتبكة. قال أبو مصعب حدثنا مالك عن عمه أبي سهيل بن مالك عن أبيه أن عمر بن الخطاب رضي الله تعالى عنه كتب إلى أبي موسى الأشعري أن صل الظهر إذا زاغت الشمس والعصر والشمس بيضاء نقية قبل أن يدخلها صفرة وأن صلي المغرب إذا غربت الشمس والعشاء وأخر العشاء ما لم تنم وصلي الصبح والنجوم بادية واقرأ فيها بسورتين طويلتين من المفصل. قال أبو مصعب حدثنا مالك عن هشام بن عروة عن أبيه أن عمر بن الخطاب كتب إلى أبي موسى الأشعري أن صلي العصر والشمس بيضاء نقية قدر ما يسير الراكب 3 فراسك وأن صلي العتمة ما بينك وبين ثلث الليل وإن أخرت إلى شطر الليل فإن أخرت إلى شطر الليل وإن أخرت فإلى شطر الليل ولا تكن من الغافلين. قال أبو مصعب حدثنا مالك عن إسحاق بن عبد الله بن أبي طلحة عن أنس بن مالك رضي الله تعالى عنه أنه قال كنا نصلي العصر ثم يخرج الإنسان إلى بني عمرو بن عوف فيجدهم يصلون العصر. قال أبو مصعب حدثنا مالك عن يزيد بن زياد عن عبد الله بن رافع مولى أم سلمة أنه سأل أبا هريرة رضي الله تعالى عنه عن وقت الصلاة، فقال أبو هريرة فأنا أخبرك أن لا صلي الظهر إذا كان ظلك مثلك، وصل العصر إذا كان ظلك مثليك، والمغرب إذا غربت الشمس، والعشاء ما بينك وبين ثلث الليل، فإن نمت فإلى نصف الليل فلا نامت عينك، وصلي الصبح بغلس. قال أبو مصعب حدثنا مالك عن ربيع بن أبي عبد الرحمن عن أحسن الله عليك. قال أبو مصعب حدثنا مالك عن ابن شهاب عن أنس بن مالك عن أنس no ابن مالك there right
Yes.
it is ابن مالك عن أنس بن مالك رضي الله تعالى عنه أنه قال كنا نصلي العصر ثم يذهب الذاهب إلى قباء والشمس مرتفعة فيأتيهم والشمس مرتفعة. قال أبو مصعب حدثنا مالك عن ربيع بن أبي عبد الرحمن عن القاسم بن محمد أنه قال ما أدركت الناس إلا وهم يصلون الظهر بعشي. So what are we, right? How many mistakes? Somebody's supposed to be counting mistakes. I forgot to mention that.
Counted.
About 7, maybe 10. 5? Alhamdulillah. Go ahead.
I'm just going to correct this.
قال أبو موسى أحمد بن أبي بكر الزهري عن ابن مالك بن أنس عن
It gets tricky. Close your eyes. Make it easy.
عن ابن شهاب أن عمر بن عبد العزيز أخر صلاة يوما فدخل عليه أروة بن زبير فأخبره أن المغيرة بن شعبة
فأخبره
I said it?
I don't know. I just repeat. Go ahead. I didn't hear it. Go ahead.
أخر صلاة يوما فدخل عليه أروة بن زبير فأخبره أن المغيرة بن شعبة أخر صلاة يوما وهو بالكوفة فدخل عليه أبو مسعود الأنصاري قال ما هذا يا مغيرة أليس قد علمت أن جبريل نزل فصلى رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم ثم صلى رسول الله ثم صلى رسول الله ثم صلى رسول الله ثم صلى رسول الله ثم قال بهذا أمرت. فقال عمر لعروة اعلم تحدث يا عروة إن جبريل هو أخبر رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم وقت الصلاة. فقال عروة كذلك كان بشير بن أبي مسعود يحدث عن أبيه. قال عروة ولقد حدثتني عائشة زوج النبي أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم كان يصلي العصر والشمس في حجرتها قبل أن تظهر. قال أبو موسى حدثنا مالك عن زيد بن أسلم عن عطاء بن يسار أنه قال جاء رجل إلى رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال جاء رجل إلى رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم فسأله عن وقت صلاة الصبح. قال فسكت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم عنه حتى إذا كان من الغد صلى الصبح حين طلع الفجر ثم صلى الصبح ثم صلى الصبح ثم صلى الصبح من الغد بعد أن أسفر. قال أين السائل وقت الصلاة؟ فقال ها أنا هذا يا رسول الله. فقال ما بين هذين وقت. قال أبو موسى حدثنا مالك عن يحيى بن سعيد عن عمرة بنت عبد الرحمن عن عائشة زوج النبي أنها قالت إن كان رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يصلي الصبح فينصرف نساء متلافعات بمروطهن ما يعرفن من الغلس. قال أبو موسى حدثنا مالك عن زيد بن أسلم عن عطاء بن يسار وعن بسر بن سعيد وعن الأعرج يحدثونه عن أبي هريرة أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال من أدراك ركع من الصبح قبل أن ركعتين من أدراك ركعة من الصبح قبل أن تطلع الشمس فقد أدراك الصبح ومن أدراك ركعة من العصر قبل أن تغرب الشمس فقد أدراك العصر. قال أبو موسى حدثنا مالك عن نافع مولى عبد الله بن عمر أن عمر بن الخطاب رضي الله عنه كتب إلى أم علي أن أهم أمركم عندي أن إن أهم أمركم عندي الصلاة من حفظها أو حافظ عليها حفظ دينه ومن ضيعها فهو سواها أضيع فهو لما سواه أضيع. ثم كتب صلوا الظهر إذا كان الفيء ذراع إلى أن يكون ذيل أحدكم مثله والعصر والشمس بيضاء نقية قدر ما يصير راكب فرسخين أو ثلاثة والمغرب إذا غربت الشمس والعشاء إذا غاب الشفق إلى ثلثي الليل فمن نام فلا نامت عينه فمن نام فلا نامت عينه فمن نام فلا نامت عينه والصبح والنجوم بادية مشتبكة. قال أبو موسى حدثنا مالك عن عمه أبي سهيل بن مالك عن أبيه أن عمر بن الخطاب كتب إلى أبي موسى العشري أن صلي الظهر إذا زاغت الشمس والعصر والشمس بيضاء نقية قبل أن يدخلها سفرة وأن صلي المغرب إذا غربت الشمس وأخر العشاء ما لم تنم وصلي الصبح والنجوم بادية وقرأ فيها بسورتين طويلتين من المفصل. قال أبو موسى حدثنا مالك عن هشام بن عروة عن أبيه أن عمر بن الخطاب كتب إلى أبي موسى العشري أن صلي عصره والشمس بيضاء نقية قدر ما يصير الراكب 3 فراسخ وأن صلي العتمة ما بينك وبين ثلثي الليل فإن خرت وإن خرت فإلى شطر الليل ولا صلي ولا تكن من الغافلين. قال أبو موسى حدثنا مالك عن إسحاق ابن عبد الله ابن أبي طلحة عن أنس بن مالك أنه قال كنا نصلي العصر ثم يخرجون الإنسان إلى بني عمرو بن عوف فيجدهم يصلون العصر. قال أبو موسى حدثنا مالك عن يزيد بن زياد عن عبد الله بن رافع مولى أم سلمة زوج النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أنه سأل أبو هريرة عن وقت الصلاة فقال أبو هريرة فأنا أخبرك أن صلي الظهر إذا كان فأنا أخبرك
صلي
فأنا أخبرك فأنا أخبرك أن صلي
مو أن صلي
صلي الظهر صلي الظهر إذا كان فيء مثلك
إذا كان ظلك
مثلك وصلي العصر إذا كان ذلك مثلك والمغرب إذا غربت الشمس والعشاء ما بينك وبين ثلثي الليل فإن أخرت فإن نمت إلى نصف الليل ولا تنام فلا نامت عينك وصلي الصبح بغلس. قال أبو موسى حدثنا مالك بن شهاب عن أنس بن مالك أنه قال كنا نصلي العصر ثم يذهب الذاهب إلى قباء فيأتيهم والشمس مرتفعة. قال أبو موسى حدثنا مالك عن ربيعة بن عبد الرحمن عن القاسم بن محمد أنه قال ما أدركت الناس إلا وهم يصلون الظهر بعشي.
One thing I forgot to mention in the biography of al-Qasim ibn Muhammad, they say that al-Qasim ibn Muhammad, and they name some other people, كانوا يؤدون الحديث على حروفه. While people like al-Hasan al-Basri and Muhammad ibn Sirin, they used to narrate the hadith bil-ma'na. So, al-fay, al-dhil, qareeb. It wouldn't make you da'if, right? It wouldn't make you da'if that you made that switch. Because it's okay to narrate the hadith bil-ma'na. But our goal is to be as precise as possible. Fadwa? Huh? What time? Fadwa? Tomorrow.
Yes, because I didn't review it at all.
Tomorrow? طيب هذه رواية ما في باب.
عن شهاب أن عمر بن الخطاب أن عمر بن عمر بن عبد العزيز دخل صاحب يوم فدخل عليه عليهم عروة بن الزبير فأخبره أن المغيرة بن شعبة آخر صوت يوما فدخل عليه وهو بالكوفة فدخل عليه أبو مسعود الأنصاري أليس ما هذا يا مغيرة؟ أليس قد علمت أن جبريل عليه الصلاة والسلام نزل فصلى رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم ثم صلى فصلى رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم ثم صلى فصلى رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم ثم صلى فصلى رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم ثم صلى فصلى رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم ثم قال بهذا أمتي فقال عمر لعروة اعلم ما تحدث اعلم ما تحدث يا عروة إن جبريل عليه الصلاة والسلام هو أقام رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم وقت الصلاة قال عروة فقال عروة كذلك كان بشير بن مسعود يحدث عن أبيه عروة ولقد حدثتني عائشة زوج النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم صلي الظهر إذا كان يصلي الظهر
العصر
وكان يصلي العصر والشمس مرتفعة والشمس في حجرتها قبل أن تظهر. حدثنا قال ابن موسى قال حدثنا مالك عن زيد بن أسلم عن عطاء بن يسار أنه قال جاء رجل إلى رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم فسأل ابنه عن وقت صلاة الصبح قال فسكت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم عنه حتى إذا كان من الغد صلى الصبح بعد قبل أن تطلع الشمس حين تطلع الشمس طلع الشمس
فجر
حين طلع الفجر وصلي الصبح من الغد ثم صلى الصبح من الغد بعد أن أسفر فقال ثم قال أين السائل عن وقت الصلاة فقال ها أنا ذا يا رسول الله فقال بين ما بين هذين وقت حدثنا مصعب قال حدثنا مالك عن يحيى بن سعيد عن رسول الرحمن عن عائشة زوج النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أنها قالت إن كان رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يصلي الصبح فينصرف النساء متلفعات بمروطهن ما يعرفن من الرأس. قال ابن موسى قال حدثنا مالك عن زيد بن أسلم عن عطاء بن يسار وعن بوس بن سعيد وعن الأعرج يحدثون عن أبي هريرة أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال من أدرك ركعة من العصر من أدرك ركعة من الصبح قبل أن تطلع الشمس فقد أدرك الصبح ومن أدرك ركعة من العصر قبل أن تغرب الشمس فقد أدرك العصر. قال ابن مسعود قال حدثنا مالك عن نافع مولى عبد الله بن عمر قال أن عمر بن الخطاب رضي الله تعالى عنه كتب إلى عماله إن أهم أمركم عندي الصلاة من حفظها أو حافظ عليها حفظ دينه ومن ضيعها فهو لما سواها أضيع. ثم كتب أن صلوا الظهر إذا كان الفيء ذراعا قدر ما يسير الراكب إلى أن يكون ظل أحدكم مثله وأن صلي والعصر والشمس بيضاء نقية قدر ما يسير الراكب فرسخين أو ثلاثة وصلي العصر والمغرب إذا غربت الشمس والعشاء إذا
إذا غاب
إذا غاب الشفق إلى ثلث الليل فإن نمت فمن نام فلا نامت عينه فمن نام فلا نامت عينه والصبح والنجوم بادية مشتبكة. قال ابن مسعود قال حدثنا مالك عن أبي سهيل بن مالك
عن عمه
أبي سهيل بن مالك عن أبيه قال عن أبيه أن عمر بن الخطاب رضي الله تعالى عنه كتب إلى أبي موسى الأشعري أن صلي الظهر إذا كان أن صلي العصر
أن صلي الظهر إذا زاغت
الشمس والمغرب إذا غربت والعصر والشمس مرتفعة والشمس بيضاء نقية قدر ما يسير الراكب قبل أن يدخلها صفرا وصلي المغرب وأن صلي المغرب إذا غربت الشمس وأخر العشاء ما لم تنم وصلي الصبح والنجوم بادية مشتبكة وقرأ فيها بسورتين طويلتين من المفصل. حدثنا أبو موسى قال حدثنا مالك عن عروة بن هشام عن هشام بن عروة عن أبيه أن عمر بن الخطاب رضي الله تعالى عنه كتب إلى أبي موسى الأشعري أن صلي العصر إذا كان أن صلي العصر والشمس بيضاء نقية قدر ما يسير الراكب 3 فراسخ وصلي العتمة وأن صلي العتمة ما بينك وبين ثلث الليل وإن أخرت فإلى شطر الليل ولا تكن من الغافلين. حدثنا قال ابن مسعود قال حدثنا مالك عن يزيد بن عن إسحاق بن عبد الله بن طلحة عن أنس بن مالك أنه قال كنا نصلي العصر ثم يخرج الإنسان إلى بني عمرو بن عوف فيجدهم يصلون العصر. قال ابن مسعود قال حدثنا مالك عن يزيد بن زياد عن رافع بن عبد الله بن رافع مولى أم سلمة رضي الله تعالى عنها
زوج أم سلمة زوج النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم
سأل أنه سأل أبا هريرة رضي الله تعالى عنه عن وقت الصلاة فقال أبو هريرة رضي الله تعالى عنه فأنا أخبرك صلي الظهر إذا كان ظلك مثلك والعصر وصلي العصر إذا كان الليل وصلي والمغرب إذا غربت الشمس والعشاء ما بينك وبين ثلث الليل والصبح فإن أخرت فإن نمت فلا نامت فإن نمت إلى نصف الليل فإن نمت فإلى نصف الليل فلا نامت عينه والصبح وصلي الصبح بغرس.
نعم.
قال أبو مسعود قال حدثنا مالك.
First one, last one. I'm saying the first one is the last one. Who was the first one? No, the first hadith. Who was it? Ibn Shihab.
قال أبو مسعود قال حدثنا مالك عن هشام بن عروة
ابن شهاب
عن أنس بن مالك كنا نصلي العصر
أنه قال
كنا نصلي العصر ثم يذهب الذاهب إلى قباء فيأتيهم والشمس مرتفعة. حدثنا مصعب قال مصعب حدثنا مالك عن عبد الرحمن
عن ربيعة
بن عبد الرحمن عن القاسم بن محمد أنه قال ما أدركت الناس إلا وهم يصلون العصر الظهر بعصر.
نعم ممتاز. طيب أنا أروي هذا الكتاب بإسناد متصل من شيخنا أبي صلاح إلى إمام مالك رحمه الله تعالى، لكن برواية يزيد ابن أبي زياد. وقد أجزتكم. Everything in this bab is the same as what is in the riwayah of Yahya ibn Sa'id. I'm sorry, Yahya ibn Yahya al-Laythi. وقد أجزتكم. طيب. Two things I did want to mention before we finish with this for today. The first one, we talked about knowing the times. And from the things that are, wallahi, like it's a good transition before we go into iqtida. From the things that come with knowing the times is that the Muslims, we had our own times. For example, what time do we pray Fajr? No, that's what's happening. What time do we pray Fajr? That's what's happening. What time do we pray Fajr?
In the darkness.
When it's Fajr time. So, right? We pray Fajr at Fajr time. What time is Fajr time?
What time is Fajr time?
Yeah. Here, we see that Fajr time does what every day?
Go back.
Changes. Right? For us. Because what do we use as our measurement of time? We just use the regular clock. 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, right? The Arabs, during the time of the Prophet ﷺ, first of all, the 24-hour period, where did it come from? 24 hours in a day, where did it come from?
Cycle of the sun.
La, maybe, but la. Like, we think of that as something new. At least I do. I used to think that's something relatively recent. The 24-hour period of a day was no, because we can't say the cycle of the sun, because can you see the sun at night?
No. Well, yeah.
You're right.
You're right. Well, cycle of the sundown.
Well, we know sundown, but what about the 12 hours of night?
Day starts at Maghrib.
So what about the 12 hours of night? How do we know what they are? We can't see the sun anymore. So this 24-hour day, they say it actually started with the Babylonians or the Assyrians, right? It's something that is extremely old. In the Arab, they used to recognize the 24-hour day. During the time of the Prophet ﷺ, they used to recognize the 24-hour day.
How?
How would they recognize it?
You got to
Yeah. But that question right there is the first thing we think about. We always say, like, how? We're not that smart. Just because it's the 21st century, they knew how to tell time just like we know how to tell time, right? We think a lot of times that, well, they couldn't know how to do these things. But no, they knew how to do these things. In fact, they did these things better than us in an Islamic way. Every hour of the day with the Arabs had a name, right? The way we name 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock. Every hour of the day with the Arabs had a name. Not 1, 2, 3, but the day was broken into 2 halves.
How do you get 60 minutes?
We didn't say 60 minutes. We said an hour, right? You know an hour as 60 minutes. The Arabs didn't know an hour as 60 minutes. They knew an hour as a period of time. And they knew that their days were divided into 24 periods of time. Why is this important? And I'm going to talk about what they are. You ever read the hadith about Jum'ah? Whoever goes in the first hour, then it's like he's given a camel as charity. What's the first hour? And whoever goes in the second hour, then it's like he's given a cow. Whoever goes in the third hour, it's like he's given a sheep, and to the end of it. What are these hours? The hour of Jumu'ah, Sa'atul Ijab, the hour of answering. We don't think of an hour, first off, the way we think of an hour now, that it is 60 minutes, every minute is 60 seconds, right? Every second is a beat, right? This is new. But breaking the day into 24 hours, that's old. And a sa'a to them was a period of time. And so our days were broken up into 24 periods of time. And all of these periods of time had names. What am I looking for? Photos. So you can see here, this is how the Arab's day used to be broken up. So Fajr was always hour number 4. Fajr every day would be 4 o'clock, right? Because you had the different time periods, and Fajr would always be whatever that 4 o'clock hour was. Because their days, the hours didn't change. You see what I'm saying? Because whatever that sign that you would use to recognize it would be how you would tell what the day is. So if you look and you see Fajr, and I can send it to you, inshallah. It's easy. You can find it on Google. If you just look Asma' Awqat As-Sa'at in the Arab, you'll find it. So, oh yeah, I'm passing that around because I haven't memorized them all. So I need to see it before I can continue.
Just take a picture.
So if you look, our days start with what? Let's make it easy. The American day starts when? No, the American day. Midnight. The American day starts at midnight. The Arab day begins when? Maghrib. But that wasn't the first hour. That was the first hour of the night. But you had 12 hours at night and 12 hours in the day. And none of them was considered 1 or 2 or 3 or 4. It was just, okay, daytime, these are the 12 hours of the daytime, and nighttime, these are the 12 hours of the night. So like in that hadith, when we said whoever goes to Jum'ah in the first hour, i.e. the first hour of what? The first hour of the day. And when does the day start? Fajr. So whoever goes to Jum'ah on the first hour of the day, it's like he's given a camel. So if you make wudu, you take a ghusl, you go to Jum'ah, and that first hour of the day, it's like you've given a camel. And if you go in the second hour, like a cow, and like this.
Oh, Jum'ah being Friday.
Yeah.
Being a day. Okay.
And the 6th hour of Jum'ah would be what? If there's 12 hours in a day, the 6th one would be what?
This camel thing, I thought it was applicable to Jum'ah,
Going to the Salat. Whoever goes to Salat al-Jum'ah in the first hour. So you go, you take a ghusl, and you wear your best clothes, and you go to Jum'ah hour 1. It's as if you've given a camel in charity. What's hour 1? Fajr. Meaning you pray Fajr, you take a bath, you put on your best clothes, and you go to the masjid for Jum'ah. It's as if you've given a camel. Whoever does that in hour 2, right? What's hour 2? Whoever does that in hour 3, whoever does that in hour 4, whoever does it in hour 5, and then hour 6, the angels wrap up their scrolls, right? And they sit down to listen to the khutbah. What is hour 6? Dhuhr, because it's midday, because there's 12 hours in a day, and so hour 6 would be what? The midday. And that's what time you pray what? Jum'ah. That's why the angels roll up their scrolls and prepare to listen to the khutbah. And so what are these hours of the day called?
You said there's 4 hours?
There's 12 on each side, 12 in the night and 12 in the day.
Right.
There's some disagreement. Is Fajr nighttime or daytime? And then there's also the way that they lay it out. If you start at midnight being hour number 1, then Fajr would always be 4 o'clock. But it's not that they necessarily broke it up that way. They gave every hour a time, they gave every hour a name. So we'll start at the hours of the day. The first hour of the day is Sabah or Subh, Al-Fajr. The first hour of the day is Al-Fajr. And that's what we learned about in this chapter. We learned about Fajr time, right?
What is the Sod for?
Huh?
What does the Sod stand for?
What's Sod?
Like you see on the blue.
Sa, right? That's what time of the day it is. It doesn't stand for Sa, it stands for Sabahan. Sabahan, right? Morning time. So the first hour of the day is Fajr. And like I said, there's some disagreement. Is it part of the day or part of the night? But that's why you see in this calendar, they count it as part of the nighttime, right? Because it's under the sunrise. They would count the first hour of the day, sunrise. So if you start with the first hour of the day being sunrise, the first hour of the day, they called it shuruq. We all know shuruq, salat al-ishraq, shuruq, when the sun rises till it gets to the height of a spear in the sky. And then you have the word bukur, bukratan wa ashiyya, abkara, right? Bukur is that time of the day from sabah before duha. And if you're looking at it, like you see where it fits in, where the sun would be at in the sky. Like this chart is showing you where the sun would be at during that time of the day. Al-Ghudwa. Right, the next one, Al-Ghudwa. You see it's after Bukur, Bil-Ghuduwi wal-Asal. Right, so we see Al-Ghudwa is right before Al-Duha. And then you have Al-Duha. Right, Al-Duha is that time period in the middle. Like if you're talking about from sunrise, hour number 3 would be Duha. Hour number 4 would be Duha. Then you have what they used to call al-Hajira. And al-Hajira was right before high noon, when the sun is like almost at its peak, and it's one of the hottest times of the day. So if you see a hadith when they say, and salaytu bil-Hajira, I prayed in that early morning before Dhuhr. And then you have al-Dhahira. And that's why they call it Salat al-Dhuhr, because it comes in at the end of the Dhahira, which is right before high noon. And then what does the sun do? It moves. It goes away. They call that time rawah, to go away. And so if you ever hear somebody say ruhtu ilayhi, right? Rawahan, right? I went during the rawah time. That means after Dhuhr, when the sun started to move away. And then after that you have Asr. And if you look at that chart, look how early Asr is, right? Remember we said, قَدْرَ مَا يَسِيرُ الرَّاكِبُ فَرْسَخَيْنِ أَوْ ثَلَاثًا, right? That's only 2 hours after Dhuhr, right? 2, maybe 2.5 hours after Dhuhr. And then you have Asil, Bil-Ghuduwi wal-Asal. That time is, Qasr. After Asr, you have Qasr. And they call Asr and Qasr, Al-Asr and Al-Qasr, because of how short the time is. Right, Asr, it makes it difficult to pray in that time because the day is getting shorter. In Qasr, you got even less time. It's getting smaller and smaller. And then you have Al-Asil, right? Bil-Ghuduwi wal-Asal, right? Al-Asil is that time right before Ashi, right? And you got Ashi is that hour right before sunset. And then you have Ghurub, and that is the end of the 12 hours of the day. And then you have the 12 hours of the night. You have a shafaq, which we know is that red that's in the horizon. And then you have al-ghasaq. Aqim as-salat li duluk al-shamsi ila ghasaq al-layl wa Qur'an al-fajr. Right, duluk al-shams ila ghasaq al-layl, that's dhuhr, asr, maghrib, isha, wa Qur'an al-fajr. Right? Min sharri ghasiqin idha waqab. From the evil of the ghasaq when it comes, right, which is the second hour of the night. And then you have al-atama, and that's why they used to call it salat al-atama, right, when it's getting really black and dark now, and you're putting your animals up and it's nighttime, the stars are coming out. And then they had a period called as-sudfa, and then al-fahma. Al-fahma is when the night is dark now. There's no more sun, and the darkness has taken over. It's like a dark coal. So they will call it al-fahma. And then you have az-zalla. And then you have midnight, which would be az-zulfa. And now at this moment, it's going to start getting brighter, even though it's still dark. So you have al-bahra. And then you have as-sahar, right, which is that time of the day you would eat your sahur, right, as-sahar. And then after that, you have al-fajr. And then after that, you have al-subh. The sun still hasn't risen yet. And that's what I used to call it, salat al-fajr, salat al-subh, because the sun still hasn't risen. And then you have sabah, right? Right before the sun rises, and then you have shuruq again, when the sun breaks out. And so those were the times of the day. And all of these times, there are other moments that enter into it, like al-ghalas, al-ghabash, al-ghabas. And so it's important to know all of these times when you're reading hadith, especially about the times of salat. And from the things that I really like if I had my way, Fajr would always be at 4 o'clock. Instead of us changing the prayer time every day, we would change the daytime every day. So what time is Fajr? Fajr is at 4 o'clock. Right? And your days would be centered around that. If you all ever become Muslim rulers in the country where you got to make a time system, don't feel scared to change it and make Fajr 4 o'clock every day. And Dhuhr would be at what time?
4 a.m. It's just sun.
We won't even call it a.m. What does a.m. mean? Who made up a.m.? We don't know nothing about a.m. Right? Fajr is always as-sa'a rabi'ah. And Dhuhr would always be as-sa'a wahida. Right? You see what I'm saying? Because instead of us changing the time of prayer, we would say this time of prayer is that hour. And the day would change around it. So the days would be centered around what? Around salat. Instead of the salat being centered around the time of the day. You see what I'm saying? You go to work after Fajr. Right? And your work day always starts after Fajr. So every morning you wake up, you pray Fajr, you go to work. Now, we understand why they changed that in more common places, because people don't pray Fajr. The life isn't like that anymore for a lot of people. So if I need you to be at work on time, and I said come after Fajr, well, I don't know what time you're going to get here. Do you pray Fajr at, Bil Ghalas, or did you pray in the Isfirar? And so, like things like that, this is something that the Muslims can get back to when they're in charge. And it's a much better day if your day is based around Fajr. I get up, I pray Fajr, I go home, I eat my breakfast, or I ate my breakfast before Fajr, because I did it in Sahur time, in Sahur, right? And then, for example, in the Shuruq, or maybe even better yet, in the Bukur, you got to come to work. So at 6 o'clock, you go to work. And 6 o'clock will always be daytime. 6 o'clock will always be light.
That's if you don't apply the daylight savings time.
What is daylight savings time? 6 o'clock would always be light. Because what time is 6 o'clock? Bukur. So whenever it's Bukur time, that's what? 6 o'clock. And you would work, for example, until Asr.
So daylight would be excluded.
There's no daylight savings. There's no daylight wastings. It's whenever it looks like this, what time is it? It's 6 o'clock. You see what I'm saying? And like this, it'll be an interesting way for the Muslims to get back to that time period. That's one of the things I found very interesting about this chapter. The last thing we want to do, and this is the hard part. MashaAllah. Kullukum rawaytum al-hadith. MashaAllah. Hufal. Musnid. Yusammun. The scholars of hadith, they have 3 levels. A musnid, a person who knows the hadith with the chain. Right? At this moment, you can give somebody the hadith. You are qualified. You can give somebody the hadith. You've narrated it with a chain back to Imam Malik. Do you all have a chain back to Imam Malik? And we just gave you one. And you know the hadith, you memorized it, right? Most of you all it's from the ones we heard. We still got 2 we got to hear from. But fiqh, right? A couple of mistakes here and there. It's still fiqh. Don't kick you out, right? So that's the first level, a person who is musnid, a person who can narrate a hadith with its chain. The second level is a muhaddith. And that's a person who knows more about the hadith than they don't. Right? Now we still got a long way to go till we get there, right? Person who knows more about the hadith than they don't. Mm-hmm. You know, if there's 100 things to know, you know 51.
Right.
We still got a long way to go. There's still a lot about this chapter that I don't know. You know it all? And then you have a hafiz, the person who pretty much nothing escapes him. Right?
80%?
Pretty much nothing escapes him. 99, 90%.
Okay.
Right?
All right.
And then you have Amir al-Mu'mineen. He knows it all. He's the Khalifa. You got to listen to him. He tells you something, Sam'an wa ta'a. Right? So we're not going to try to become muhaddithun, because it takes time. But what we can do is we can try to apply the fiqh of the hadith that we learned. So the first question is, prove to me salat is wajib.
Prove to me
Huh?
First
And you should have.
Prove it.
From only
So I gotta
these.
see
Only these hadith. I'm only asking you a question that these because what you have to look at is Imam Malik brought these hadith for a purpose.
Right.
We know he brought them to talk about the time of salat, but when you're laying down a book of fiqh or you're trying to educate, you have to learn the method in teaching. What's the first thing you want to talk to somebody about salat?
That's wajib.
It's wajib. So the first thing I need to know is how to prove salat is wajib. Prove to me salat is wajib.
The first hadith.
What is it? What is it? How prove that it's wajib?
نزل جبريل فصلى رسول الله.
Jibril came down. That don't mean nothing.
Yeah, but this is the time. This is one of the.
بهذا أمرت.
ثم قال بهذا أمرت. Right? بهذا أمرت proves that salat is what? Wajib. Because he's saying بهذا أمرت. Ya Muhammad, you've been commanded with this. Who commanded him with that? Allah. There's so many benefits here. Who told the Prophet that Allah commanded him with that? Jibreel. What's the Quran? No. What's the Quran? Kalam Allah. Sent down with
Sit down with
Jibreel to the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ in the Arabic language.
Right.
Is that Quran?
No.
You see, but you see how, like, understanding these definitions, this is why the definition of Quran is what it is. It's the speech of Allah sent down in the Arabic language to the Prophet Muhammad by way of Jibreel. Al-Mu'jaz bi-lafzihi, al-Mutawatir isnad, right? All of these things. Why is with Jibreel? Who told the Prophet Muhammad bi-dhalika umirt? Who told the Prophet Muhammad? Jibreel. What language did he tell him in? Who told Jibreel to tell Muhammad that you've been commanded by that? Allah. So why is it in the Quran? What's missing? Mutawatir, maybe. Did Allah say bihadha umirt? Or did Jibreel tell Muhammad what Allah said? You see what I'm saying? And so you see, like, if somebody asks you, like, one of the questions that always come up when you're teaching, like, the definition of the Quran, you want to give an example of something that isn't Quran that meets a lot of its qualifications. This is an example, right? Did Jibreel come with the Sunnah? Yes. Jibreel said bihadha umirt. What is that? Is that the Quran?
Salah is sunnah.
Yes, the Salat is Sunnah. It's Sunnah.
Because the Prophet ﷺ did it.
You see what I'm saying? It's the Sunnah.
Shit is fun.
But the point is that Jibreel come with the Sunnah. So the Sunnah is what? Wahi. The Sunnah is revelation. Can a person reject the Sunnah with the claim that it's not in the Quran? Because who brought the Sunnah to the Prophet? Jibreel. Prove to me Jibreel brought the Sunnah to the Prophet. Bihadha umirt. Aqeedah. Right? Like, so we know Salat is wajib. How many Salat are wajib? 5. What's the proof? صلى فصلى رسول الله 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 ثم قال بهذا أمرت. It's only 5 salat that are wajib. That proves to us that every salat outside of these 5 are not what? Witr. Not wajib.
Not wajib.
Tahiyyat al-masjid.
Not wajib.
Rak'atay tawaf. The 2 rak'at you make when you're done making tawaf and hajj.
Not wajib.
When you get that.
So you see, but this is a proof that 5 salat are wajib. Right? So if somebody says, Buni al-Islamu ala khams, Islam is built on 5, iqamat as-salat, what salat do you got to iqam? What salat do you have to establish? What are they? 5, okay. Like, what are the 5 salat? Okay, Fajr, prove it.
قال عمر ابن الخطاب كتب صلوا الظهر.
I said Fajr.
I'm going down the line.
Okay, get there.
Well, the rest.
Get there. Let me hear it. Prove to me that there's Fajr salat.
فسأله عن وقت الصلاة الصبح.
فسأله عن وقت صلاة الصبح.
فقال قال فسكت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم عنه ثم صلى الصبح من الغد حتى إذا كان من الغد صلى الصبح
إذا
إذا كان إذا حين طلع الفجر.
حين طلع الفجر. خلاص. I know there's a salat al-fajr. Because the Prophet prayed as-subh min al-ghad hina tala al-fajr. طيب, what's the second salat? Dhuhr. Prove it.
I missed what you said.
So we know that there's like for example, these are like the type of things that they used to do. Somebody might say, I know there's 5 salat, but I don't believe Fajr is one of them. I don't believe that you have to pray Fajr. There are 5 salats. I agree with that. All the Muslims agree that you have to pray what? 5 salats. I just don't believe Fajr is one of them. What do you say? You now have to prove that what? One of the 5 salats is what? Fajr. How do you prove that one of the 5 salats is Fajr? Can you just say, well, everybody says, I remember. Right? He says, I believe there's 5 salats, akhi. I just don't believe Fajr is one of them. Right? How do you prove it? The hadith of Ata ibn Yasar. ثم صلى من الغد حين طلع الفجر ثم صلى الصبح من الغد حين طلع الفجر. And then he prayed the early morning prayer the day after when it was Fajr time. So that shows us that there's a what kind of salat? A Fajr salat. Like, what's the second salat? Dhuhr. What's the proof that there's a Dhuhr salat? What do you say? ثم كتب, that don't prove nothing. ثم كتب and صلى الظهر. خلاص. That proves that there's a Dhuhr salat.
It's not put, for the Fajr, it's supported by a hadith.
We just, yeah.
But that's not putting a horse before the cart. The hadith according to
I don't understand. According to Imam Malik?
what you recited, the proof of Fajr.
So if we haven't proved anything about Fajr yet, we just proved that there is a salat called what?
Fajr.
Is there a salat called Fajr?
Yeah.
How do you know?
But you just said the proof was from a hadith.
Yeah.
Somebody said they witnessed the Prophet
Prayed at
after
Fajr.
the night. Yeah, Fajr.
He said, ثم صلى من الغد ثم صلى الصبح من الغد حين طلع الفجر. Then he prayed the next day when the Fajr came. So that shows us that there is a salat that is what? Fajr. We don't know nothing about Salat al-Fajr yet. We just know that there is a salat called what?
But that hour has been established.
We know that there is a salat. We're not even talking about the hour yet. We just know that there is a salat called what? Fajr. Somebody says, I believe that there are 5 salat.
I'm trying to put it together.
I got you. Somebody says, I believe there's 5 salat. You've proven to me now there's a Fajr. But I don't think Dhuhr is one of them. I don't think there's a salat called Dhuhr. A person who says there's not a salat called Dhuhr, that person is a what? Kafir. You see what I'm saying? He says, no, there are 5 salat. I just don't think Dhuhr is one of them. It's Fajr, Asr, Maghrib, Isha, Witr. That's 5 salat.
Again, gotta be supported by a hadith.
Prove to me that there's a salat called Dhuhr. And Umar bin al-Khattab, أن عمر بن الخطاب كتب إلى عماله أن صلي الظهر. And صلي, nobody called it yet. Nobody called it yet. Huh? Either can't صلي الظهر. So we know now that there's a salat called what? Dhuhr. Like, what's the next salat? Prove to me there's a salat called Asr. Don't use the hadith of Umar. أبي هريرة من أدرك ركعتين من العصر. خلاص. I know there's a salat called Asr. What's the next salat? Maghrib. Prove to me there's a salat called Maghrib.
The hadith.
They're all hadith. I said the hadith.
No, it's not the hadith. Yeah,
What'd you say? والمغرب إذا غربت الشمس. حديث من? الله أكبر الله أكبر. Okay, you gonna go Umar? Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. You wanted Abu Hurairah, Abdullah bin Rafi'. That's who you wanted. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله.
أشهد أن محمدا رسول 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 الله.
حي على الصلاة.
لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله.
حي على الصلاة.
الله أكبر الله أكبر.
لا إله إلا الله.
لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، له الملك وله الحمد وهو على كل شيء قدير. اللهم حمد نعمة التامة والصلاة القائمة على محمد وصلاة وفضل وبركاته. We skipped 2 things. What is a proof? Show me how important salat is. What is that? من حفظها فقد حفظ دينه. حديث من? عمر بن الخطاب. Show me that the one who doesn't pray is a kafir. That's not understood. Hadith.
من حفظها حفظ دينه.
No, من حفظ دينه. ومن ضيعها فهو لما سواها أضيع. Right? Now that's a stretch to say that that person is a kafir, but that hadith could support the person who doesn't pray is a what? Kafir. Because is there anything left? If you lost salat, then you lost everything else. That means what? You don't have any? It's not. So we know salat is obligatory. We know the virtue of salat. We know the danger of not praying. You see, it's like we're writing our own book of hadith. Imam Malik already did it for us. The obligation of salat. The virtue of salat. The danger of not praying. What salat are obligatory? What are the 5 salat? What's the proof that there's salat al-Isha? Salat al-Atama. Okay, but that's Atama.
That's Isha though.
Is it? Prove to me Atama is Isha. Hold on. First you got to prove to me Salat al-Atama. Salat al-Atama.
That was known.
Salat al-Atama. It's not. I don't know nothing, Akhi. I just accepted Islam. You gonna tell me it's no? You're talking to a 3-year-old, a 7-year-old. He don't know nothing. You'll be surprised. You go to the school and you teach your child. They don't know Fajr, Dhuhr, Maghrib, Ashr, Isha. They don't know nothing. You told me there's Salat al-Atama. I thought it was Salat al-Isha. When I was in New Shahada, the Imam used to say, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I say, I know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I didn't know who that was. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So you're talking to somebody who don't know nothing. Prove, what is Salat al-Atama?
Isha.
What is Salat al-Atama? You just said it. Well, and Salat al-Atama?
Atama.
Yeah, I guess that. ما بينك وبين ثلث الليل وإن أخرت إلى شطر الليل. Okay, prove to me Atama is Isha. وصل العشاء ما بينك وبين ثلث الليل فإن إلى نصف الليل. Right? What he said about Isha is what you said about Atama. So Atama is Isha. I now know there's a Salat al-Isha. Like, we've already proved Fajr, Dhuhr, Maghrib, Asr. Fajr, Dhuhr, Asr, Maghrib, Isha. Like, when is Fajr? الغلس ونجوم بادية مشتبكة حين طلع الفجر. That's what time it starts. When does it end? بعد أن أسفر. Right? But what if I catch it before the sunrise? When does it end? I don't know. قبل أن تطلع الشمس. I got all of that. What's okay? That's right. What's the proof? Who? I don't know nothing. You just saying words. Who said it? Abu Hurairah. Hadith Abu Hurairah. قبل أن تطلع الشمس. So Fajr is from حين طلع الفجر. Hadith Ata. Mursal. And then the end of Fajr is Hadith Abu Hurairah. قبل أن تطلع الشمس. Like, when is Dhuhr?
When is Dhuhr?
Hadith, there we go. Now we going now. Hadith. Umar bin Khattab, what did he say? إذا زالت الشمس. I like that one. And صلى الظهر إذا زالت الشمس. When does it end? Is that Maghrib? You can pray Dhuhr all the way to Maghrib? Beginning of Asr, that's not a hadith.
إذا كان
ذلك مثل
Hadith man.
أبو هريرة.
لا. Okay, yeah. Hadith Abu Hurairah. لا.
إذا كان فعل
Because Hadith Abu Hurairah doesn't prove when it ends. Hadith Abu Hurairah tells you when to pray Asr. Hadith Abu Hurairah says, وَصَلِّ الْعَصْرِ إِذَا كَانَ ظِلُّكَ مِثْلَيْكَ. That doesn't prove when Dhuhr ends. What hadith proves when Dhuhr ends?
كان فعل ذراع.
It ends when your phase of dhira. That's real quick, like 15 minutes.
العصر وشمس.
That's Asr. We talking about Dhuhr. Ashi? Ashi is from Dhuhr to Maghrib. So I got all the way into Maghrib. Y'all skipping the hadith of Umar.
أو
إذا كان الفيء الذراع إلى أن يكون
ذلك
ظل أحدكم مثله. Hadith Umar. The other hadith of Umar, hadith Abi Suhail and Umar, right? I mean, and Malik and Umar. So you got to put them all together to know, okay, now I know when Dhuhr begins and I know when Dhuhr ends. Like, when does Asr begin?
قبل أن
Huh?
يدخلها سفر.
إذا كان الفعل ذراع.
Nah, that's Fajr.
You said Asr?
Yeah, I said when does Fajr begin? I mean, Asr.
والشمس بيضاء نقية.
Oh, that's what time is Asr, but when does it begin?
صلوا العصر إذا
قبل أن يدخلها الشمس. قبل أن يدخلها سفر.
أدرك ركعة من
Huh? You got to tell me whose hadith it is.
والضحى إذا غرب إذا
والعصر.
والعصر إذا غربت إذا والشمس بيضاء نقية.
Okay, that's an example of when Asr is, but when does it begin? He didn't say it started there. Hadith Umar. وصل العصر والشمس بيضاء نقية والشمس بيضاء نقية والشمس بيضاء نقية. حديث أبي هريرة وصل العصر إذا كان ظلك مثليك. So we see here something's missing. We don't have any hadith that tells us exactly the moment when Asr starts. We don't have any hadith that tells us exactly the moment when Asr starts. You see what I'm saying? None of the hadith give us exactly the moment Asr starts.
But we can use the one of the Dhuhr, the end of Dhuhr, right? When
Who said that Dhuhr and Asr have to end that they have to meet each other? The Ahnaf, they use the hadith of, I'm pointing to you like you're Hanafi, but the Ahnaf, they use the hadith of Abi Hurairah that Dhuhr doesn't start until when? The shadow reaches twice the length. You see what I'm saying? Asr. They say Asr doesn't start. So they say there's a gap between Asr and Dhuhr. But now we know that from the hadith of Abi Hurairah that they say that the Ahnaf say that there's a gap between Dhuhr and Asr, while everybody else says that Dhuhr and Asr,
no gap.
no gap.
Yeah, that's what.
And these hadith help us memorize that. Because the hadith of Abi Hurairah says Dhuhr is when? إذا كان ظل مثليك إذا كان ظلك مثليك هذا رأي أحناف. And there's no mentioning of the other one, so that shows us that, okay, maybe it begins with Dhuhr, with the end of Dhuhr.
ظهر is مثلك.
In Abi Hurairah's narration, right? But in Umar's narration, إذا زاغت الشمس. Those are two different times.
ظهر مثلك and Asr is
مثليك. That's in Abi Hurairah.
Yeah.
But Umar is إذا زاغت الشمس والشمس بيضاء نقية.
I'm just saying because
Yeah.
you said ظهر is مثلك.
Oh, ahsan Allah alayk. Now, so there's no direct hadith that tells us when Asr starts in the ones that we learned. I'm trying to see, is there any other hadith that tells us when Asr starts? No, we got وَكَانَ الشَّمْسُ فِي حُجْرَتِهَا قَبْلَ أَن تَظْهَرَ. Huh? Yeah, there's tons of hadith that tell us when Asr starts. We're just talking about specifically this book.
But I think, what about when the Prophet used to postpone Dhuhr until sometimes when it's too hot?
But we didn't get that. It's in this book. We're trying to use this book
Okay.
to build our understanding. Like, does this book answer our questions about Salah? So the only thing we don't have a direct answer for right now is, when does Asr begin? Exactly when does it begin? As opposed to every other Salat, we got an exact beginning and exact end. What do you benefit from that? Asr time overlaps with Dhuhr. In the Maliki madhab, Asr and Dhuhr overlap. You see what I'm saying? Meaning there's a moment where you can pray Dhuhr and Asr at the same time. When you can pray Dhuhr on time and Asr on time, and they'll both be on time. That's the Maliki madhab. And that's why you see that they don't mention any hadith here specifically about when Asr begins.
Is that the same issue with Maghrib and Isha or no?
No. Because we have a begin. When does Maghrib begin?
إذا غربت الشمس.
إذا غربت الشمس. So we have a beginning for Maghrib. When does Asr end?
Asr end.
Yeah. قبل أن تغرب الشمس. حديث من؟ حديث أبي هريرة. حديث أبي هريرة. لا. قبل أن يدخلها الصفرة is about the time of Asr. But there's no direct hadith about when Asr begins, as opposed to Maghrib, Dhuhr, Fajr, Isha. They're all hadith about exactly when they start. Why is that important? Because in the Maliki madhab, Dhuhr and Asr overlap. There's no precise beginning for Asr. You see what I'm saying? Like for the Shafi'i, the Hanafi, the Hanbali, they all have a specific moment that Dhuhr begins. The Malikiyah, they say, no, there's no specific moment. Asr begins, and it's still Dhuhr time. They overlap. You see what I'm saying? طيب. When does Maghrib end? That. Think of all the hadith that you know in this chapter about Maghrib. وصل المغرب إذا غربت الشمس والمغرب إذا غربت الشمس والمغرب إذا غربت الشمس والمغرب إذا غربت الشمس. There's only one hadith about it. All the hadith about Maghrib say the same thing. إذا غربت الشمس. That means that the Maliki madhab, Maghrib only has one time. Right? Maghrib only has one time. And what time is that? إذا غربت الشمس. There's no extending Maghrib in the Maliki madhab. Right? طيب. When does Isha begin? إذا غاب الشفق. حديث من? عمر بن الخطاب. نعم. حديث عمر بن الخطاب. Huh? When does Maghrib, when does Isha end? إلى ثلث الليل وإن شطر الليل. حديث من؟ عمر بن الخطاب. وكذلك حديث أبي هريرة إلى نصف الليل. So we now see that in this small section, he's told us the obligation of salat, the virtue of salat, the danger of not praying, what are the salats, and all of the times of salats. Not only that, he told us the better times for each salat. What's the best time for Fajr?
Before you go to that, what did he say when Isha starts? This one?
Best time for Fajr. Ghalas. Hadith man. Hadith Aish and Hadith Abi Hurairah. Right? بغلس. وصل الصبح بغلس. The best time for Dhuhr is when? The best time for Fajr is when it's still dark outside. The best time for Dhuhr is when? No, that's the end of Dhuhr. إذا كان فيء ذراع. Okay. Anybody else? حديث قاسم ما أدركت الناس بعشي إذا كان فيئك ذراع. So we know the best time for Dhuhr is, right? What's the best time for Asr? والشمس البيضاء نقية. What else? قبل أن يدخلها الصفرة. Same thing. What else? قبل أن تظهر. Hadith Aisha. Right? And so all of these things are telling us the best time to pray. Asr. قدر ما يسير الراكب ثلاث فراسخ فيأتيهم ويجدوهم يصلوا والشمس مرتفعة. Right? All of these are still showing us the best time for Asr. What's the best time for Maghrib? إذا غربت الشمس. خلاص. It's the best time for Isha. The best time for Isha. Hadith Umar. وأخر العشاء ما لم تنام. Delay it as much as possible, as long as you don't sleep before it. Right? What's the best time for? And we already did Fajr. We now know all of the things from the beginning of the chapter. What the ruling of Salat is. What are the 5 Salat? What's the virtue of the Salat? What's the danger of not praying? What are the times of all of the Salats? And what is the best time for all of the Salats? There's still one thing missing. What's missing? Is there a salat that's obligatory, that's wajib, that's missing? No?
All of them.
No, I think we're missing a salat that's wajib, that's obligatory. Which is not obligatory. Maghrib, we talked about Maghrib class, we know it. Fajr, we know Fajr?
Oh, Jum'ah.
Jum'ah. We don't know nothing about Jum'ah. What's the next chapter? Bab al-Jum'ah. And like this, we see why he's going in that order.
This 5 obligatory, not.
Jum'ah is one of the 5 obligatory salat.
Oh yeah, because it changes the book.
So now we see, now we're in the mind of Imam Malik. I know what's the ruling of salat. What's the virtue of salat? What's the danger of not praying? I know what the 5 salat are. I know when the 5 salat are, beginning and end. And I know what's the best time to pray the 5 salat. The only thing I don't know now is Jum'ah. And so next week, Imam Malik is going to give us the rulings of the time of Jum'ah. And then after we do that, we'll know what time to pray. And that is knowledge. That is knowledge. You can teach a child. You can teach an adult. You can now say Haddathana, right? So-and-so and so-and-so, all the way up to Imam Malik. واضح؟ سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك اشهد ان لا اله الا انت استغفرك واتوب اليك.